Joe O'Connor asks, he says, any suggestions on tools or methodology for standardizing a schema to accommodate 1,000+ instances that may all be slightly different? Joe, let me ask a follow-up question too. If you can return back and ask, do you want them to be different or do you want them to be the same? That'll probably influence the answer that we give you there. Let's see here. Next up, James Kelly says, in SQL Server 2005, I got to stop using last names because somebody's going to ask a question they're ashamed of, like James Kelly, who has SQL Server 2005. Poor guy, God bless him, because it's not a bad database platform. It's not horrible. It's better than 2000 was. He says, SP EPL, why am I sad I didn't read this first? SP REPL monitor refresh job causes high CPU when suspended mode on the distribution database. What should I look into in order to reduce CPU? Tara, I'm even sorry I read that, but you're the only one who'd even be remotely qualified. You know anything about that?
I haven't encountered that, and I used Replication for, I don't know, 10 years or so. Causes heights. I don't even, what is meant by suspended mode on the distribution database? Is that when the jobs are not
I bet
working?
he's doing SP who is active. I bet he's doing SP who is active and he's seeing suspended.
But suspended doesn't necessarily mean anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, causes high CPU. Are you sure it's that refresh job that's causing high CPU? And if it is, I would start taking a look at the replication monitor and looking for the what kind of latency you have in the queues. You probably, I would imagine you've got a large backlog, and maybe that's why it's taken a while to pull up the data.
That makes sense. So my webcam probably just froze. I all of a sudden got pouring down rain here. You could hear it in the building. Just all of a sudden it pours down, and immediately my internet dies. I'm like, oh, it's going to be like that. It's going to be like that.
What kind of backwater?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Without roads are you in?
Richie's like, it rains all the time.
Dennis says that MS certs are great at uncovering what areas you don't know. Yeah, but also what areas you don't need to know.
Or what areas you do know.
Yeah. I know. Greg asks an interesting follow-up question. What do you guys think about the new Microsoft certs for data science? Did you guys see that new degree?
Yeah.
Richie clearly saw it. Erik saw it. Yeah.
I've only heard about it. I haven't seen it.
I didn't look at it. I just saw the headlines and went, what? So Richie, you made such a face. There must be a good reason you made that face, or a bad reason.
Calling it a degree is weird to me. That's it's just strange. I don't understand it. So I spent 5 years getting my 4-year degree. So am I going to spend 6 years trying to get my 7-year MS degree? I don't understand. I don't understand it.
Is it really that long term? I thought it was like hours.
Well, but it's also the kind of thing you're going to do spare time. It's not like I hope to God you're not going to take out a loan and go do that kind of thing. Go spend $1,000 on exams or something.
Well, it was like $500 or whatever. Something. I don't know. I didn't read all the fine print.
And there's going to be no like exam or training on it, third party for a while because it's all brand new, and that platform changes so fast. I'm like, I don't get that. So I'm not keen on that.
I mean, James the basics of it doesn't, but I mean, is that what they're going to teach? I mean, they're going to teach me the basics of data science independent of their platform? Or are they going to say, this is how we do it at Microsoft?
Using it's going to be the old golden hammer from Microsoft.
There was a statistics course in it, or like one statistics test, but then the rest was heavily Microsoft. Yeah, exactly. I was like, especially if you want to know more than one tool set if you're going to do the data science thing. In the database community, you can know just Microsoft and you can make a wonderful living for yourself. It's fantastic. Data science is not, you don't get to learn just one tool. You got to learn a lot of tools.
Yep.
James says he's waiting for his boss to get a credit card and register for the senior SQL DBA class next week. Cool, very cool. We're doing an online class there for 4 days. Nate Johnson says SQL Server Management Studio 2016 says it won't work with 2005 instances, but it's working okay for me. Have you guys used SSMS 26 or 2016 with 2005? I will answer that one. No, we were doing La Cucaracha the day that 2005 was out of support. Erik was doing a countdown for that date. He could not wait. So we haven't used it at all. Usually what that means with Microsoft is just that they don't have it in their test matrix anymore. It usually works. There's bug edge cases where it won't, but you're usually okay. Let's see here. Thomas says, I think the new certs, I think if you're new, the certs are good because they show that you've been at least exposed to areas of SQL servers. In my day job, I don't do any analysis services, reporting services, or integration services, so the certs will give me some exposure to them in an organized way. You can die of exposure. You know, that's a super dangerous thing.
Naked and afraid.
Naked and afraid in indexes.
Unsubscribe.
Michael Tilley asks a question that is really consists of multiple parts in a novella. So if you guys want to read into it, I'll read through it. Michael says he has a question about index rebuilds. He works at a large university, actually Brent's alma mater. I don't think you're allowed to say that unless you graduate. And University of Houston for 3 semesters. So yeah, I have a large students table, 35,000 students a year, if I remember correctly, that has many, many millions of rows of active and inactive students. I have a maintenance plan that does a nightly index rebuild on the, holy cow, on the, yeah, already we're shaking our heads. It seems to take an excessive amount of time, 90 minutes. Right now we're rebuilding it online. I'm thinking that maybe I should turn it offline. What should I do?
I think you should turn that maintenance plan off.
Yeah. Why are you doing this?
Because like my whole thing with what you're saying is that like you probably get a whole bunch of students once a year.
What are you trying to say?
I'm trying to say that you enroll students once a year.
Some of them graduate.
Yeah, but it's you enroll students once a year, and so like you add in a new crop of students, and at that one point, you know, your table might be fragmented. And then after that, you probably, like, you know, might have some dropouts, but you just change them to inactive. You don't, like, delete them from the table. Like, I can't imagine the students table is getting heavily fragmented aside from, like, enrollment and graduation. Or, like, even then, like, you know, graduation is probably just switching to inactive. So I just can't imagine a way for fragmentation to even accrue that much on a daily basis.
I think if they had an index on estimated completion or estimated graduation date, my record would have moved around a lot during the course of me being there. But I mean, for the rest of people, yeah, not so much. Let's see.
So what can he do, Erik?
Oh yeah. Good point.
If you're really, I mean, you would have to go back. I wrote a blog post recently. No surprises there.
What?
Peanut gallery, alias. So, and it was about when do you when you want statistics instead of an index, but it touched a little bit on why index fragmentation isn't really that important and up-to-date statistics are far more important. So what I would do in your shoes is I would stop rebuilding the index every night. I would, you know, stop rebuilding indexes pretty much in general and then just update the statistics daily and see how you fare. If, you know, you'll probably just end up in the same place now where, like, you know, performance is what it is because the statistics got updated. It didn't reflect all on the fact that you were rebuilding the index every night and wasting hours and hours of your life and precious disk and CPU time. And
for the updated statistics, because you have several million rows of data in that table, you could probably just get away with like a 20%, 30% sampling. You probably don't need to do a full scan on that table.
Mm-hmm.
See, Nathan says he's got an availability group, and they very regularly have to resync their DBs. They've added new databases, and we also have to start syncing those, but we're not able to do a full sync because the drive letters don't line up anymore. For example, I have some drive letters that exist on the primary, but not on the secondaries. Is there a way to automate this process without doing backups and restores and joining them manually?
Well, I mean, you have to do a backup and a restore and say with move in order to get the different drive letters. So, no, there isn't a different way.
Rename your drives.
Yeah, rename your drives. You know, script this out so that it's automated at least. You're not having to do it manually.
Yeah, there are actually a bunch of questions on dba.stackexchange.com about how to automate adding databases to availability groups, and there were some not fully fleshed out scripts, but there were some pretty good outlines of the scripts on there about how to get started. But you are going to have to make certain considerations for the fact that you have different drive letters and that stuff when you're writing your script.
I want to say there's a trick with the subs command too. Like there's this command line subst that can let you make fake drive letters that point to other drive letters. Totally don't quote me on that, but just Google it to see. I'm sure it's not supported, but just as a fun trick. Michael from my fake alma mater comes back and says, as it turns out, we do have constant fragmentation because we keep all our student history. Yeah, I know, because you keep asking me for donations, which seems pretty stupid because I dropped out. Why would I give you money if I didn't finish? He says, as we constantly update the home address and phone number and other info, so lots of updates. Listen, you've got to unsubscribe me. I've asked several times. That's not true. It wouldn't bother me at all to see. Although you did bulldoze the dorm that I was in, and I was a little pissed off about that one. Let's see here. Thomas says, we have a former DBA who granted the rights on the service accounts to an endpoint. I think he used his own personal service accounts on an endpoint, like mirroring or availability groups. I can't drop his login without changing that. Is there a way to change which service accounts have permissions on an endpoint without dropping and recreating the connection? I tried alter authorization and that didn't work.
What's the endpoint being used for? I mean, can't you just rebuild whatever that is? Is it mirroring? Is it availability group? You know, what is it?
And it should be a brief outage, right? Just recreate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Get a maintenance window for this.
Yeah, I like that. And you want to be patching anyway. I'll also take the crazy thought of, why change it? Leave it under his account. Just change, as long as you have the password.
Oh, maybe rename it so that it's like a service account now and not someone's, because the SID will remain the same, so you don't, it'll appear as a regular account at that point.
The service account formerly known as.
Yes.
Joe comes back with 1,000 schema thing. Joe says, are there any suggestions or tools or methodology for standardizing to a single schema that will accommodate slight differences in 1,000+ instances without losing any data? Wow.
Oh! So is it 1,000+ SQL Server instances and trying to get them all into one database with different schemas? I'm confused what the question is.
You know what I bet he's doing, Eric? I bet he's doing what your favorite ISV does. Yes. I bet. So we blog about this. K-Hero Relativity is a piece of software out there, and customers are allowed to change tables, but your deployment scripts still have to work. How do their deployment scripts work, like when they drop a new version of their app?
The last time I did it, the deployment scripts were in a numbered folder and called by a C# by some program. I won't say, don't quote me on the C#, but I mean, they just, it's tough because you have to like specifically change only your indexes, and the last thing didn't go so well because there were some custom objects that they didn't account for that I had to like go back and manually change. So I don't know that I would recommend that process as an overall process. But they do alter tables directly from scripts and everything.
Run them in order based on their version upgrades. They also have dozens of developers to manage that kind of thing.
Yep.
Lee asks, I'm curious, why does the model database, the system database model, why does it have recovery set to full?
Well, that's just because it's the default for new databases. So when you create a new database and you don't provide all the settings, it uses model as the template, and that it's just the default that Microsoft has set. I really wish that they would switch it to simple. If they're going to have everything be default to full, then how about you default to setting up transaction log backups too?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I like that. We should have a connect item for that. We should totally...
Close, won't fix.
Immediately.
Yeah.
Lakshmi says, I have a database and a simple recovery model, and we make a lot of changes on, say, Friday nights. The transaction log grows to like 20 gigs. Why is it that my log file is growing even in simple recovery model? Did I say simple recovery mode at the beginning? That's Tara's hot.
It's one of mine. Yeah, everyone says recovery mode.
Yes, simple recovery mode model.
Your logging of your transactions doesn't change based upon your recovery model. It's still the same amount of logging. So if you have 20 gigabytes of data changes you're making, or at least logging, it's going to be the same with simple or full. It's what happens at the end of the transaction is what's different between the two recovery models. With simple, that is, that it's cleared from the transaction log after it completes, either rolls back or commits. With full, it stays in there until until something backs up the transaction log. So the size doesn't change based upon the recovery model.
Some yo-yo doesn't begin tran, your log is going to be growing for a while. Matthew says, have you guys ever experienced noticeably degraded performance as a result of having antivirus installed on a SQL server?
Yes, definitely. That's why you need exclusions in place. At one point, we had like something like 46 exclusions on the database servers, and I think it went even higher. I forget what the number was, 60s or 70s, I think. But there's a list of exclusions that you need to have in place on a SQL server. It's SQL Server executable, your MDF files, LDF, NDF, all these, BA key. There's just tons of them, and I believe that this is documented somewhere what your exclusion should be. I don't know where it is though.
Yep. There's a KB article. If you search for SQL, if you Google, Bing, whatever, SQL Server antivirus, and then you cite : support.microsoft.com. If you cite : in Google and restrict it to a single site, you'll get the answers just from the Microsoft knowledge base. Graham says, other than Microsoft's content, so I guess we know how he feels about Microsoft's content, are there any good end-of-life or lifecycle management references for SQL Server versions? Hey, did you guys ever see any good database documentation around when you should upgrade or how to handle upgrades other than Microsoft's?
Most of the ones that I've seen reference a lot of Microsoft stuff, like using the best practice advisor and the upgrade advisor, and using those as sort of jump-off points for what you should do from then on out. And Microsoft does, at least I think, a fairly decent job of for the upgrade advisor stuff, like giving you the scripted out things that you need to do your migration with.
How do you, Tara, with all the SQL servers that you guys manage, how did you do processes for upgrades? Did you write out, here's exactly what we're going to do in which order, or was it different every time you guys did a SQL server?
For the when I was at Qualcomm and I was the primary DBA for a specific division, it was really based upon what projects were in the pipeline and if we could get an upgrade placed into that project. If they were doing a major release, maybe we could get that database upgraded. And I'm sure to this day they still have SQL Server 2005 instances out there. I've been gone from them for about 3 years, but I'm positive just because how many there were when I left. There weren't any 2000, but tons and tons of 2005, and some of them probably just get stuck there. Not all companies care about not being supported by Microsoft. So what if you don't have any security hot fixes? If you have a secure environment, you may not care about that type of stuff. Companies really care about getting releases out, making their customers happy. Do they really care about the SQL Server version behind the scenes? The DBA team cares. What do we have to support?
That's why we still at the company, we still run Windows 95 here at Brent Ozar. It works really well.
Well, I'm on 3.1, that workgroup edition. Yeah.
I've been trying to get him to upgrade. That Trumpet TCP/IP stack is just not.
Yeah, it's an oldie but a goodie, man. I can't.
Oldie but a goodie. That's Solitaire. No Minesweeper like 3.11. Adam
that hot dog
asks,
theme. That's what it is.
Hot dog theme. Oh my God, the hot dog theme is correct. So for those of you who ever get out in the community, if you ever get the chance to see Erland Sommerskog speak, Erland Sommerskog is the presenter in the SQL Server community, and he usually uses the hot dog theme on his desktop. It's just awesome. Comic Sans everywhere, pastel colors.
That would drive me crazy.
Sans is the SSMS font.
Adam asks, what do you guys recommend for patching? What is a good balance of staying up to date with SQL Server patches while not just being on the hamster wheel continuously and doing constant updates? How often do you recommend patching SQL servers?
It depends on the definition of constant.
Yeah. So based upon these large corporations that I've worked with, most of them want to do monthly patches. Now, as the person who has to do the patches, I don't want to do monthly patches because it is painful when you have to do 100 servers, 700 servers. We had a lot of servers that had to be patched, and it wouldn't just be one person having to do all this patching. It'd have to be a team of people, and it was disruptive. There was always some issue on some server that patches would not work. Maybe failovers weren't working that day. There was always some issue, and it was just painful. It took way too much time, and I wanted to do quarterly, but large enterprises want to ensure that their environments are secure. Now, that goes against what I just said about SQL Server 2005 and not having security hotfixes, and these are the same corporations I'm talking about. So, But yeah, as one of the people on the patching team, I did not want to do it monthly. I would much prefer quarterly. Oracle doesn't do monthly, or I should say Oracle teams don't do it monthly. And I don't mean just one company. It's very common for them to do quarterly or twice a year. Why is it so important on Microsoft? I mean, I realize it's because of all the bugs there are as far as security goes.
And the really good thing about quarterly patches too is that it gives you some time to apply them to a development environment and let them burn in and make sure that they don't do anything too funky. Because a lot of times a patch will get released and within the first 24 hours, a lot of people will be raising their hands like, it broke something.
Yeah.
So it gives you time to test things out as well. Quarterly is a good span of time to run across something awful.
Yeah, one of the companies I work for, the patches came out on Tuesdays. Patch Tuesdays was what everyone calls it for Microsoft patches, and then by Thursday we had to have it installed in production. I mean, that was very aggressive. We ended up switching it to the following Tuesday, but still, it's still very aggressive.
So is that to see you next Tuesday?
Yeah. Like how? I mean, yeah, they've been installed in the test environment, but there's some testing, automated testing that's occurred on those, but that's not enough time to burn those patches in.
Oh, that would suck.
That's horrible.
Graham says he's trying to move to DSC, desired state configuration, for SQL Server upgrades and migrations. I haven't seen anybody successfully use DSC for SQL Server. I saw Stack was trying to use it and failed. They had to give up on it, and they have really bright PowerShell guys over there. I don't think it's quite there yet for SQL Server. It makes total sense for Windows, just not quite there yet for SQL Server.
I've never even heard of that. DSC.
It's the design. The idea is you programmatically declare what you want the server to end up as, and then Windows takes care of patching it, and installing the right features, and getting it to that point for you. And it's not quite there.
Isn't that what System Center Configuration Manager does? I mean, it just knows what you're missing.
Yeah, except you're also supposed to be able to declare in code the whole state you want to get to, server names, what IIS tools you have installed, SQL Server features, where you turn things on and off. Yeah, it's pretty tough. Lakshmi says, I just made my manager purchase the everything bundle from your training. Hope I can learn much more from there. Well, what are you doing on our free webcast? Go over to the good stuff. Here, we're just answering questions. These people don't know what they're doing. Go learn the good things. No, but thank you for picking that up. That's awesome. We have a good time building that stuff. Ankur says, hi, I'm using the Database Tuning Advisor in SQL Server 2014 for recommendations, but it's only giving me drop index recommendations. Does the DTA... What? Listen, I was trying to keep a straight face while I was asking this question. Does the DTA ever provide any index suggestions too?
Boy, howdy.
Why are you using DTA?
So why should he not use the DTA?
DTA is crazy.
How else are you going to get those?
We have a tool called SP Blitz Index, which is very helpful for finding missing index requests. There are some differences between it and DTA. Missing index requests are fueled by a process in the query optimization process called index matching. The stuff in the DMVs that gets logged is per query. The stuff that DTA logs is per workload. So, you might have something set in your settings that's not giving you missing index requests for your workload, that you can do both, and you can click a bunch of stuff where you want suggestions, even for index views I found out recently. So that's the difference between what they each do. But if it is only generating drop index recommendations and you have missing index recommendations enabled, I would really like to see what comes out of SP Blitz Index for you. Sure, that's a wild time.
Yeah, I have a blog post that I was working on, and it introduces a script that prevents the DTA indexes from being created.
And it's so with the blog post, I don't think it's gone live yet. Oh,
no, I was working on it. I haven't loaded it yet. Still writing it. But the script is, I wrote the script. The script is great.
Greg Smith says, great video on the Dell DBA Days blog post today. We're excited about that. We'll all be down in Round Rock sweating through our shirts in August. We're going to try and stay in the air conditioning.
What else is new, Brent?
What else is new?
There's a really good question up top, if you don't mind.
Oh, yeah? Who asked?
It's a Scott Kelly question, and it's, what would you say to a manager that says they need an active HA solution but has no idea what that means. And I think the most diplomatic way to handle that is to ask them to sketch out what that would look like and provide a budget for it, and then, you know, go from there. Because if, you know, you just don't walk into your manager and say, you don't know what that means. Ask them to spend some time, like, you know, sketching it out, you know, give a Visio diagram or just a whiteboard of what it would look like and how much he thinks it would cost. And that's where I would go from there if I was in your shoes.
This is a topic that I had to deal with a few times at one of the companies. Every few years, management would like, we want to do active, and so every single time we would go to the vendors and say, what can we do to make this happen? And here comes the price tag, and we'd send it to management. And they said, oh no, never mind. It is very expensive. I mean, we're talking $2 million up probably. And that's what it was.
Not just licensing.
Yeah, exactly. That's just several years ago. Last time I looked at it.
And if you get our download pack, if you go to brentozar.com and click First Aid up at the top, we have a download pack, and we have a high availability and disaster recovery worksheet in there that helps you sketch out how much data you're willing to lose, how long you're allowed to be down for. And one of the options is a 0-0 failover solution. It's $1 million and up, just so be honest and talk through it with the manager. The other thing I'd ask the manager is, what's driving that? What is it that's making you want that? And it may just be that they want cost savings or whatever. And I'd say, all right, so can you introduce me to someone else you've worked with at one of your past places who can help us design that? Well, I've never worked with anything. Oh, me neither. Sounds like it's a good time for me to go to training. Let's see. I had another question in here. Tom asks, from what your team has seen, have many companies started using Core installations yet? Windows Core. Have any of you guys seen SQL Server on Windows Core yet?
Nada.
I started playing with it as far as what we would have to do to install everything, and what does the database team need to learn. But this was back on 2008 Core, and it wasn't very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we abandoned it, and I'm sure that company is now using Windows Core because we really wanted to get to that due to Microsoft patching, because there's a lot less to patch on Windows Core than there is on the full versions.
Yeah, same thing here where I was at a company and they were testing it, and the IT folks really wanted to go Core, and the DBAs were like, whoa, wait a second, I don't know how to handle some of this stuff. So they tested it, and they're like, maybe not. So they abandoned it.
Yeah. Was it Windows 2008 Core where it first was released? I think so. Yeah, it was terrible. We were researching how to set lock pages in memory via code. All these things that you have to do on the database server when you start, when you need to set up a SQL server. Once it's there, you probably have some PowerShell stuff. But back then, it was just painful. I mean, we figured it all out, but we decided we just didn't want to support it yet, so we were waiting for Windows 2012 Core.
If I remember right, on 2008 Core, you also had to enable TCP/IP through the SQL Server Configuration Manager, and even that, it's through the GUI. So, yeah. Ankur says, "Hi, I love using your scripts from the First Responder Kit. I want to use them in production to get performance recommendations, but my manager stopped me in doing so after reading the license agreement of yours. Do we have to buy it from you?" No, it's totally free. And in fact, if you go to firstresponderkit.org, firstresponderkit.org, it has the open source license on there. When you go to firstresponderkit.org, go click on the GitHub link at the top right, and it has a license that's very normal for open source products. You are free to use it in any capacity that you want to use it, as long as you keep that copyright in there. If you try to, for example, bundle it into a paid product and you don't include that note of where it came from, then it gets a little sketchy. But you can use it for, if you want to take over the world with SQL Server, using Service Broker and linked servers, whatever you want to use it for, is go knock yourself out. Nate says, this will be the last one that we take, because he says, as soon as I see a question that says, I don't know if you have time left, that means I probably should have written it before I do this. He says, but when I was a young boy, he says, no, if I had a stored proc that needs to be executed with a low-level user but requires higher permissions, and I don't want to get the low-level user. He wants to give people access to run stored procedures, but they need to be peons. What does he need to do? If you go to brentozar.com/askbrent, brentozar.com/askbrent. That sounds like it's an advice column. It's not. It's about a stored procedure, but it has a little instruction on there on how to use certificates in order to grant permissions to users to run stuff. Really simple. Sounds horrifying, but it's super simple. That certificate word sounds awful.
You're probably going to change that URL at some point now, huh?
I need, at some point, I need to move all the rest of the documentation over there because people are going to go, what do you mean ask Brent? That doesn't make any sense. Yeah. Yeah. You guys are funny, buddy.
Which one?
You changed your name too on here now. You got
I did.
Oh
Magic.
my goodness. Wow. We look professional or not. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out with us this weekend. We will see you guys next week at office hours. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.